Nick Diaz versus Adesanya. I mean, you guys hearing this rumor, it doesn't work that way. There was once a time where it did, where Nick Diaz says, I'm going to fight, and said the opponent. He got the same treatment as Conor McGregor. I mean, really, in large part, Nick Diaz could go out and pick an opponent. Now he's calling for Adesanya. But what do you guys think? Because if Nick's doing it, I'm in. Truly. Nick has done triathlons. And I got video footage of it and sat and watched every single second. I mean, truly, if Nick's doing it, I'm in. I think you guys can relate to that. But hold on a second. There was a little bit of trouble in paradise on Nick's last contest against Robbie Lawler, which was an incredible fight, and Nick was doing way better than he knew he was doing. But on that fight, it was fight week. I mean, it was Tuesday. It was no earlier than it was for sure. It was Tuesday because it was travel day. Robbie Lawler was on an airplane from Florida to Vegas when he gets contacted that they're going to change the weight class. And Robbie's gives him a thumbs up, right? Robbie Lawler couldn't have cared less, but it was an interesting thing, and it was a little bit problematic. Why is Nick one of the consummate professionals and biggest veterans in the sport? Truly has been doing this longer for more rounds and more contests than almost anybody on the roster. Why is he not on weight? It was a question. And like a lot of Nick Diaz questions, you never get the answer. And I was never satisfied with the answer that we got here. But it is very real that I bring it up. A triathlete who let us know he was coming back, and by the way, when he was going to do the comeback, was leaning towards 155 pounds, decided to stay at 170. Now all of a sudden can't make the weight it needs to contractually change. It's an interesting question. Why? What happened there? Was he hurt? Was he injured? Did he eat more? Did he change his diet? I mean, all of these things are very relevant, but the scale does matter. When a guy comes in, particularly that has been on a layoff, and he tips the scale heavier than he's ever been, you will not find me an example, and you can even bring boxing into it, you will not find me an example where that contest went well. So, I thought we had a pretty good answer, quite frankly, without ever getting one, but I felt like we all knew he'd been out. He's been laid off. I mean, at the same time period, we're seeing the same thing. It's just a guy called Conor McGregor. You wonder why Conor's falling down against Dustin Poirier? Conor hadn't been in there. The tools aren't sharp. We understand those things. Okay, great, because we're going to fix them, right? Team Diaz, we're going to learn from the mistakes of the past, and we're not going to take that break again. Real simple. We're going to use the Robbie Lawler contest to shake off the ring rust and use that as a springboard to go forward. We're in. I'm in. Everybody, this works, and that fight was really good. It was really. Nick did not know how well he was doing that fight. Okay, great. Dana came out and made a comment right after that. He said, I don't know if Nick's going to fight again. And it wasn't, for the first time ever, it wasn't from a perspective of I don't know what Nick wants to do. Now, this is a period of time ago, and this is off the top of my head, but I'm very good at this. My memory is shockingly impressive, and I'm telling you, Dana made a comment, but it was from a stance of Dana was making that call, which Dana had never done towards Nick Diaz. It was always an open door, and it was even an excitement of wanting to get it done. Dana said, I don't know if we're going to do this again. I remember that. And I thought that, Nick would make the phone call, or Cesar Gracie would jump on the phone. Hey, whoa. Say some of the things that I just said. Hey, we were out for a minute and the weight is, the ring rust is off. We're ready to go. We're using that one. And the toothpaste would go back in the tube, but that call never came. So Nick has now come out and said that he's going to fight Adesanya. Says he's going to do it in 2023. Now, once upon a time, that would be done. I mean, if everybody was serious, that would be done. The problem with Nick fighting Adesanya is the champion of the world, and Nick is not going to be able to walk into the weight class and fight for the belt. And I'm telling you this because the first time you heard Nick talk about Adesanya was when Adesanya was the champion of the world, and Nick was going to have to walk in and fight for the belt. Now Adesanya doesn't have the belt. It is a very different landscape. You could get Adesanya and Nick Diaz together. Absolutely. When there's not the title, you can go ahead and do that match. And when Nick called for this match last night, it was the first thing I thought, hey, I got to remind myself Adesanya's not the champion. Hey, Adesanya's not the champion. You could do that fight. There wouldn't be foul ball there. They would go for that. In an X's and O fight of Nick versus anybody, when you know it's going to be a stand-up fight, just has people's interest. Simple as that, right? You all agree with the statement I just made. Well, some bitch, I start thinking about it. Does Nick know that Adesanya doesn't have the belt? And that's a real question by me. I had to remind myself that Izzy got beat. Real brief, but there's oh, that's right, Al Pierre. Does Nick know that he doesn't have the belt for one? Is Nick serious? And that's important to know, because if Nick does in fact know that Adesanya doesn't have the belt, he will then in fact know that that match could get made. He's going to know that people are going to be very interested in that match. And now there's some hurdles before you guys think I'm announcing Nick versus Adesanya. I'm just talking about the fact that Izzy isn't the champion. When Nick first started calling for this fight, he had lost to Lawler and said he's coming back to fight for the championship against Izzy. That just wasn't going to work. So we're in a different time. We've still got some challenges with this match, but it could be done, absolutely. And I think of everything that we heard there, I give you all of that build-up just to get to my point, which is Nick is apparently now a middleweight. Why? Is that the right move? Anytime a guy has been out for a period of time and he comes back heavier than he's previously been, and Nick had only competed at 185 one time in his whole career. It happened to be his previous fight, but that was 5 years ago against Anderson Silva. So if this is his new weight class, okay, great. Not going to go make a whole huge thing about this, but there's not a lot of times in history where with a break, if you change your physiology and you get bigger, guys, it's calories in to calories out. And if those calories aren't going out, the question becomes why? What isn't happening? Are the runs not happening as the diet changed? It's one of those conversations, but it's very relevant to have, because if Nick came back and got the jump on Adesanya, I mean, you come to this, okay, who's next for Nick? Nick is apparently a 185-pound. I think it's a fun topic. Before you think you have to leave a comment or pick out the problems with Nick versus... please don't. We're just having fun. We're just having a conversation. But Nick has announced that he would like to come back. He's announced who his opponent's going to be. He gave a loose date of 2023. In fact, let me guess, it will probably be in March. But there's something there. And before we start to get too excited, you do have to remember the last statement Dana made on Nick, and was just on the back end of his performance with Robbie Lawler. But there was a resistance for the first time ever from the boss. From a standpoint of, this is my decision. So you were going to have to work through a few things. And any part of that could change. The story still works. Okay, take Adesanya off. He doesn't qualify for Adesanya. Okay, fine. Take Adesanya out. Let's find somebody else and put in there. But if we do that, I think that we're going to be looking at middleweight. And I think it's an interesting host of problems. Before you bring in a contender, it's probably going to take a contender to get Nick's interest. But before you bring in a contender and give him the opportunity to get beat by a guy who you don't know if he's going to be back, just a lot to think about. That's all I'm sharing. A lot of interesting parts there. That's all I'm sharing. But it was rumored that Nate was going to get his promoter's license. You get those brothers on the same card, it doesn't really matter what they do. You have something interesting there. You get those brothers on the same card, you put them against the Paul brothers, you have a real exciting night of business. And the fact that Nick, talking about coming back, he's talking about doing it in the UFC. He wasn't talking about it, doing it in what Nate was being rumored to have going. I think that's interesting. Because perhaps Nate has changed his plan about going in that direction. Perhaps. So when Nick says he wants to fight Adesanya in 2023, I think you're hearing a message of the Diazes are back. Nick returns to the UFC, I would have every belief that Nate would. And I think within that little statement of Nick saying he'd like to fight Adesanya in 2023, within that little statement, I think there's a lot of guesses we can start to make And one of those guesses is he's speaking for both the Diaz brothers.